Fans across the globe are in shock. The Prince of Darkness is gone, but the mystery surrounding his final moments is just beginning. Why are those closest to him staying silent? What really happened behind closed doors in those final hours? This isn't just a goodbye, it's an emotional deep dive into the pain, power, and private battles of a man who defined rebellion, from secret letters to unreleased music. We're uncovering it all. Stay with us, because what you're about to hear will forever change how you remember Ozzy Osbourne. For decades, Ozzy Osbourne electrified audiences across the globe. From his chaotic beginnings in Aston, Birmingham, to the roaring stages of Los Angeles and London, his presence was larger than life. But his final days, quiet, intimate, and deeply personal. While the world still saw glimpses of the wild rocker who once bit the head off a bat, those closest to him saw a different side, one of pain, decline, and quiet acceptance. The story begins with a fall in 2019. It triggered a painful spinal condition that left Ozzy barely able to walk. But his health struggles went far deeper. He had been secretly battling Parkinson's disease since 2003, only revealing the diagnosis publicly in 2020. For nearly 2 decades, he carried that burden in silence. He once called it a nightmare, and fans could see the toll it was taking on his spirit. In his final year, Ozzy was in and out of hospitals, heavily medicated, and sometimes unrecognizable even to his wife, Sharon Osbourne. But through it all, Sharon stayed by his side. She slept in hospital rooms, fought for better care, and protected her husband from the media frenzy that always seemed to follow. But what few knew was that Ozzy had begun to prepare for the end. He insisted on returning home and spending his final days not in a hospital, but surrounded by family. Only close family members were allowed in those last moments. His children Jack, Kelly, and Amy Osbourne spent long hours at his bedside. They played music, held his hand, and shared memories that stretched across decades. And throughout those final nights, one song played on repeat, Changes by Black Sabbath, a haunting ballad that speaks of transformation, pain, and goodbye. Just days before he passed, Ozzy whispered to Sharon, "I'm not afraid anymore." Simple words, but from a man who faced addiction, fame, illness, and inner demons, it meant everything. When the news broke that Ozzy Osbourne had died peacefully at age 76, fans around the world were shattered. The official family statement said he was surrounded by love and died peacefully at home within minutes. Hashtags like #RipOzzy flooded platforms like Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Vigils popped up outside his childhood home in Birmingham and his longtime residences in California. But amidst the grief, something felt strange. Just 2 months before his death, Ozzy had spoken in an interview, saying, "If I can sit, if I can sing, I'll give it one last go." That gave fans hope that he still had time. But behind the scenes, things were changing. Sharon had gone quiet online. Jack and Kelly canceled appearances and vanished from social media. And despite months of hospital stays, Ozzy was suddenly brought home. Insiders say it was his decision. He wanted to pass in peace, not under hospital lights, but in the home he shared with Sharon. Then came the questions about his will. Just a year before his passing, Ozzy had revised his will. The changes were significant. While Sharon was still expected to inherit the majority of his estimated $220 million fortune, whispers of tension surfaced, especially around Amy Osbourne, his eldest daughter. Amy, who chose to live outside the family spotlight and declined to appear on the reality show The Osbournes, was reportedly left out of some portions of the inheritance. Insiders say it wasn't out of anger, but to protect her privacy and avoid dragging her into the looming estate battle. But it didn't stop with the will. Ozzy had reportedly written personal letters, handwritten messages for Sharon, Jack, Kelly, and Amy. They were not legal documents. They were emotional reflections filled with memories, regrets, and farewells. Some believe these letters may one day be released in a documentary or memoir. Others argue that would violate Ozzy's dying wish for privacy. Still, fans are divided, torn between honoring his legacy and craving closure. There's also talk of unreleased music, songs Ozzy recorded during his final years while battling illness, kept locked in a vault. These tracks were reportedly recorded for a time when he's no longer here. As Sharon once hinted, now the question becomes who controls that legacy. Reports have surfaced of distant relatives, old bandmates, and former collaborators preparing to challenge the estate, claiming they were promised compensation. Whether or not those cases hold up remains to be seen. But one thing is clear, Ozzy's death ended his suffering. But it may have opened the door to chaos in his wake. Yet, to understand the man behind the madness, We have to look further back, before the legend, before Black Sabbath, before the headlines. There was John Michael Osbourne, born into a working-class family in Aston. He was a school dropout with a troubled past. But when music came into his life, it changed everything. Black Sabbath was formed, and with it, the birth of heavy metal. He became a symbol for rebellion, chaos, and authenticity. After being fired from Black Sabbath in 1979, many thought Ozzy's career was over. But instead of fading away, he came back swinging with his solo debut, Blizzard of Oz. Songs like Crazy Train, Mr. Crowley, and Suicide Solution not only revived his career but reshaped the genre. That album alone sold over 5 million copies in the US, and it marked a rebirth for Ozzy Osbourne. From that point on, he didn't just ride the wave of music, he created it. And then came the reality TV era. With the Osbournes, Ozzy opened his home to the world. Fans got a glimpse of the man behind the legend, the bumbling, foul-mouthed, lovable dad who couldn't work a remote but still commanded the love of millions. He connected with a new generation, proving that legends never really age, they evolve. He collaborated with artists from all genres: Tony Iommi, Zakk Wylde, Elton John, even Post Malone. He wasn't just a metal god, he was a cultural bridge, and that's why his passing hit so hard. Because he wasn't just a rock star, he was real, he was flawed, and he never pretended to be anything else. Beneath the wild headlines, the bat-biting antics, and the thunderous screams of adoring crowds, there lived a man who was quietly and constantly at war with himself. Ozzy Osbourne wasn't just the Prince of Darkness, he was a deeply emotional soul carrying wounds that never truly healed. His music, often misunderstood as demonic or sinister, was actually a cry for understanding, a poetic reflection of everything he had endured. Songs like War Pigs, Diary of a Madman, and Mama, I'm Coming Home weren't simply metal anthems. They were confessions, each lyric dripping with sorrow, regret, confusion, and sometimes hope. For millions of fans, especially those who felt unheard or out of place, his voice became their voice. He didn't write for the mainstream, he wrote for the misfits, the broken, and the invisible. But behind the stage lights and the screaming fans, Ozzy's real battle was internal. For years, he lived with an unshakable fear of death, not in a dramatic, theatrical sense, but a haunting, paralyzing anxiety. He spoke openly about his night terrors, panic attacks, and the constant fear that he wouldn't survive the night. Even at the height of his fame, when the world saw a rock god, Ozzy felt fragile, vulnerable, human. In one rare moment of honesty, he said, I think I'll go to hell. Not because I've lived through worse, but because I don't know what's waiting. That uncertainty, that looming question mark, shaped much of his life. In his final years, he began seeking peace not through organized religion, but through spirituality. He turned to energy healers, mediums, and private chaplains. He wasn't looking to be saved, he just wanted to feel still. His daughter Kelly Osbourne once said, there were times I was afraid I'd lose him before I ever got to truly know him. Now that I have, I'm not ready to say goodbye. Those words hit even harder now. For years, the world watched Ozzy Osbourne battle his demons: addiction, illness, pain, but what many forget is how fiercely he loved his family, his fans, his music. They were his lifeline, and eventually, Ozzy came to terms with the inevitable. According to his son Jack, he stopped worrying about what he might miss and began to focus on what he had already given to the world. His raw honesty, unforgettable music, and a legacy built on truth. And that truth, it wasn't polished or filtered. It was messy, it was painful, it was real. Ozzy Osbourne never claimed to be a saint. He made mistakes, big ones, but he never hid from them. In a world obsessed with perfection, Ozzy reminded us that it's okay to be broken, that strength isn't always clean or graceful. Sometimes, it's just surviving another day. He didn't just make it through the darkness, he dragged it into the light and made art from it. Today, murals of Ozzy are being painted across Los Angeles, London, and Birmingham, his homes, his roots. Because if Ozzy Osbourne taught us anything, it's this: you don't have to be perfect to be powerful. You don't have to fake strength to be strong. You just have to be real. So here we are, saying goodbye to a true legend. If this tribute touched your heart, hit like, share, and subscribe for more stories that honor icons like Ozzy Osbourne. Drop your favorite Ozzy memory in the comments below, and remember, legends never die, they just turn up the volume in the afterlife. Thanks for watching.